Hi, this is Pete Moore and welcome to PCMGuns. Got something a little bit unusual here. I was kind of by a company called CVLIFE in America, and they do scopes, reasonable cross-section of scopes, and they asked me to look at one of their scopes. I said yes indeed, why not? And so eventually through the post came the CVLIFE Eagle Feather, which first of all is made in China, which is these days most scopes are made in China and similar countries, so there's nothing wrong with that. In the old days the Chinese scopes were pretty rubbish, I must admit. We're talking 15-20 years ago here. They all smelled of burnt rubber and they weren't that clever. These days the Chinese learn to make scopes, quality optics and a good price that is comparable with a lot of stuff. So let's just open the box. So what do you get? A little manual, hot load of stickers if you like stickers on things. The main item is the Eagle Feather, which is a 4-12 by 50 scope. Okay. With it you get a bikini type lens cover, good for keeping the rain out of the lenses, but with the yellow end and that end just being plastic, not very clever to shoot through because they do distort the image. You also get cleaning cloth and a very generous selection of batteries, because you've got two systems that use the coin type CVR 3032s and the standard type for a laser. Along with that you get Allen keys to fit, but this is what else you get. You get a little laser. It's 2 milliwatt class 3A, which is a green laser, and also a red dot sight, which is actually design wise it's quite an old design. I've seen these before from China, but it comes with a reticle choice, so you get 4 reticle choices from dot to crosses to circle dots, things like that. And compared to the older ones I've seen, you get a cover over the top, which to a degree does keep them a little bit more rainproof, because this is a reflex type. Runs on a CVR 3032 battery, fully adjustable. And that is pretty much what you get for the scope. Okay, let's look a little bit closer. In terms of build, the scope is pretty traditional. It's a second focal plane, has screw type focus. That's the illumination turret, which gives you red and green illumination. This is the power ring here, and usually it turns down with this small sort of throw lever stroke lug just to help you. It's quite firm in operation, which is never a bad thing for these things. Most unusual is the fact that the scope comes, so even though it's got a 30mm body tube, you can see here, this is a 3-way Picatinny rail system which is permanently fitted to the scope, which allows you, as we shall see, to put the laser and the red dot on, or if you want to you could even put a torch on if you've got the mount, no problem. Which means you can't use traditional rings as you would with a normal round bodied 30mm scope like this. So what CVLIFE have done, they've incorporated a Picatinny style base into the bottom of here, and if you see, it's limiting, because that means you couldn't fit this scope on any rifle that couldn't accept a Picatinny rail. Here, my Ruger M722, I've got a rail for it here, so it goes on, but it does bring the scope up reasonably high, which can affect your cheek weld, and in terms of moving the scope forward and backwards, also your eye relief. So the reticle is a mil dot that uses hash marks instead of dots, which I much prefer, and on the lower line between 3 and 9 you have what looks to me like it's either a ranging grid where you actually bracket the target top to bottom, and you can once you know the target height you can work out the range, and or it's a windage or lead marks, because it curves off, as you shall see from the illustration. But the ret looks pretty useful as it is, being a mil dot. Turrets too are a little bit strange, or their placing. They are quarter MOA clicks, which is good, and you get 15 MOA per turn, which is, call it 15 inches, and 7 full revolutions top to bottom or side to side, which is quite generous. They dial, they're quite soft, but you can hear them clicking. They dial reasonably well, and they're nicely marked. The white is clear off against the black. This one, the windage one, it is split, goes from 0 into 7 in each direction, so it makes it easier to dial in a correction whichever way you're going, whereas this is just 1 to 15 and just screw straight up and straight down. My beef here is there is no cap cover, as you get with most turrets of this type, and it wouldn't be too hard in this situation to, without realising it, just maybe move this off a few clicks. It's happened to me before with scopes like this, moving through heavy cover, and you look down and you see the scope has moved off the 0 mark to maybe 2 or 3, which would affect your shot. So you do have to be aware of that. However, as you can fit the red dot, the laser, to a lesser degree, it does protect them from accidental movement. The objective is a little bit fanciful. It's got like a sort of a shade over the top, but it's cut away here. Obviously there's no sunshade for it, and it's grooved here. I think that's just for the look of the thing. Turning it around, we can clearly see the two screws to clamp it. These are slot head only, which I don't like. I'd have preferred something that had Allen heads or Torx heads. But you can move the scope back and forward along the rail, but you don't get much in the way of movement. And when I had this rigged up and I've been shooting it, I've had the scope as far back as I possibly could for the sake of eye relief. To combat the high position of the scope, I put a cheek bag on here, which does pretty much get your head where it needs to be, but maybe it could be about 1/4 inch higher. However, it's better than not having one. Another few things worth noting is the glass is multi-coated, and they quote 95% light transmission, which is quite high. That's the sort of thing you expect from a top-end Swarovski or Zeiss or Schmidt. And I didn't think it was, that was just more of a marketing ploy, but using it in low light conditions, I'm not saying it was transmitting 95% at the lowest power of 4, but it wasn't bad in terms of low light and identifying targets. Again, surprising. The illumination is 5 red and 5 green, as said before. You just turn this backwards and forward, battery goes on the top. You find that the actual illumination isn't too bad, but it's not the sort of illumination you can use in the middle of the day just if you want to see your reticle better as such. It's better when the light is going down, and that's when it really comes into play. Eye relief is quoted 3 to 3.4 inches. Again, said before, potentially limited by how you can move the scope up and down. Field of view is 10 foot at 100 yards set on 12 power and 27 foot set on 4 power. This is the laser first of all. This is on the left hand side of the rifle attached to this Picatinny rail. However, there's enough clearance here to put it on the right, so it also covers the windage. And you get 2 Allen keys to fit that. This one fits to the clamping screws for the Picatinny mount, and also for the clamping screws for the housing, because you can move the laser backwards and forwards round about 3/4 inch if you need to. The slightly smaller one is for adjusting the laser. Generally speaking, with a laser, there's a couple of things you can do with it. You can use it as a quite an interesting rangefinder, because if you say this is a 2.2 rifle, 0 at 50 yards, you could put the laser on the 0 point at 50, and depending where you are with it, if you're further than 50 or less than 50, then the laser dot will appear higher or lower on the target. So it's a good way, once you understand how it works, of using it as such. And for close range stuff like ratting and things, the laser could be useful. The laser is green. See, pinging off my hand there, it's quite intense and bright, as lasers should be. On off is here, simple press button. What would have been nice would have been a remote cable, rather than having to sort of let go of the rifle to do it, but again, that's how they've done it. The red dot just clamps on, same as the laser, with the large screw there. Turning around, this is the rear stat drum. CL3032 battery goes in there, and you get red and green illumination. Some people say that green works better on snow and red in other conditions. I don't know, but at least it gives you an option. And it's bright enough. Adjustment is also very easy. Elevation goes in there and it winds it up and down, and you can go to the other side of the scope and windage is that way. Simple as that. Very easy to adjust. The other aspect of the dot, as we shall see, so I've got to put a picture up of the actual reticles. You get 4 reticle choices. And this lever here, you flick it across and you just take it what you want. You get a dot, you get a circle dot, like a circle cross, and like an open circle cross. The other thing to think about, when you mount the red dot, there's not a lot of leeway of movement, so it's got to fit pretty much where it does. So if you bring it too far the back, it could be awkward to dial the scope. Between them, I would, if I had a choice of one, I'd sooner have the red dot, and I'd probably put a torch on the side of the rifle. But some people might prefer the laser, but for a price of around about sort of between 85 and 95 quid, I'll quote it properly at the end, so far it's quite a lot of scope for the money. It's also quite nicely finished and presented. The black's good, all controls are marked in white, so they come off each other very well, and so far so good. From the point of view of a rimfire airgun hunter, it's actually quite an attractive package. There's one thing that I do miss, and that is there's no parallax on it at all. Some other models of the Eagle Feather do have adjustable objective parallax, which is okay, it's old school, but it's nice to have, because this thing is supposed to be parallaxed at 100 yards, and in the testing I found that focusing was quite awkward. You could sort of focus the target just about, but the reticle went out. They do these in say, other specifications. I've been testing this and I've come to a few conclusions. First thing I did was I shot the box. I don't know if you know that with the scope, but to see if it tracks properly, that means if the clicks work and if they move in the right direction. What you do, you zero the rifle, whatever distance you want to, you fire a 3-round group, note where it falls from the point of aim, then wind in this case, 8 clicks, which is 8 MOA, which is 2 inches to the right, fire another 3-round group, and the round should fall pretty much 2 inches from the first group to the right. Then you lay in 8 clicks of elevation, so the third group you shoot it, so it should go up again roughly 2 inches. Then you wind in 8 clicks of left hand windage, fire again, and then you move down again and fire a final group on the first group, and that should be within that group, and that's called shooting the box. And it does tell you that the scope is actually doing what it's supposed to do. And I have to say, to this rifle's credit, well, I put it on a 17 HMR for that at 100 yards, so it's asking a bit for it, and it did. It shot quite a good box. The only problem I had with, with focusing, and if you can't get the target crisp or the reticle crisp, then it's harder to place precisely. And I tried it again at 50 with the 2.2, where I found that I could balance the focusing just using this better, and it shot with my standard sub-sync hollow point load, 42 grain Winchester Max, shot just over ½ inch in terms of a group, and the box was again square and pure, and I was very impressed with that. And the more I used the thing, the more I liked it. So, but for me, with the thing that fact it's no parallax, I honestly think I wouldn't want to put this on a full bore and push it much past 100. But this to me is really, in this configuration, a rimfire airgun scope. But if you sort out the parallax, I've got a model with parallax, I believe it would very happily step into the centre fire thing. Feature wise, the scope sits quite high. That's just the way it's done. They could have thought perhaps a little bit more about it and not made this lower mount so tall, but that's the way it is. Of the two items, I would definitely keep the red dot on, because I said before, for bunny bashing, things like that, when stuff's close, or even if it was on a hunting rifle and stuff comes out close, you know, like a deer pops out at 50 yards, and it's quicker to just go to the red dot rather than have to gather in the scope and maybe change the mag from sort of high to low. So that's great. But I didn't find a huge amount of use for the laser, but that's just me. I've never really used lasers. I mean, I understand how they work, but I would have sooner had a gun torch on here. Again, it would have been nice if you could have a remote that operated a laser or a torch, which is better than having to let go of the rifle. But again, that's merely just me being nitpicking. But the laser does work, and you know, if that's the sort of thing you need, I can imagine it rats in a barn sort of thing with a red dot on and the laser ready to go. It could be very, very useful on just general close range, low light type use. But the mad thing about this, and it really is quite mad, is they quote a UK price of $85.95, which is pretty good. Currently CVLIFE do not have a UK distributor, but they told me that that price includes postage. Now, I looked at a few videos from various American shooters on the CVLIFE range, and all said like me, it's a cheap Chinese scope, isn't it? Yeah. And they all said, this is not too bad actually. And then the more people used it, the more they were impressed with it, and it is far better than I thought it was in some of its parts. I would like to try another one, maybe for a full bore that had side parallax and things on it, because they do a hell of a lot. They do some really nice 1:6 compacts, which would just really suit the AR-15 shooter or the 2.2 semi-auto action shooter really nice. So they have a red dot in it, a laser and all sorts. And generally speaking, this is a lot better than I thought it was. And if you're thinking of buying, then you are buying for the money quite a lot of scope. There is a discount code which I put in the end panel. You get 10% discount off this particular model, which is pretty good. But again, say around about sort of thick end, you know, roughly bouncing on 90 quid. It's hard to beat compared to some scopes. So I'd give it a look. I'm not saying it's perfect. There's things that I don't like, things I do like, but if you're a certain sort of shooter, like a hunter sort of thing, you're just doing small game, then this could be the cost-effective answer. Okay, thanks for looking in. If you enjoyed that, tell your friends. If you want to speak to me, it's the same thing, pmoore.shootingsports@gmail.com. And as always, like and support the website, and stay in touch for more kit. And as double always, be safe, shoot straight. Catch you later.